Peace to everyone. So, I troll people online sometimes, right? I do it on my channel. I do it on the Muscogee groups. I will troll people, not just freedmen who are complaining about us, by-blood citizens, or whatever, right? I will troll people. I'm starting to troll more people from the PBCI, the Porch Band of Creek Indians. Okay? And I've been getting into a trolling match with someone in the last 24 hours. And it went from disagreements to her doubling down to her asking questions. You see, because they have a powwow. They've been doing the powwow since the 1970s. One of my viewers is connected with them, and he knows, and he's informed me of this. And basically, they were trying to generate revenue before they had a casino, before they became federalized. They didn't really have a way of making money as a tribe because they weren't legally a tribe. Okay. Were they recognized as being Indians? Yes, kind of. From Calvin McGee onward, they were kind of like federally recognized as being Indians. So, not without good reason to some degree, but as a tribe, that's a whole different issue. Like, as a, like, there's a lot of artificial crap surrounding the Porch Band Creek Indians, I'm noticing, and it really bothers me. But that aside, when people ask me sincere questions, and this goes for the freedmen as well, okay? I have a guy named John Perryman who I was trolling him. He claims to be a descendant of Benjamin Perryman, but he can't trace himself all the way back. And finally, I felt inclined to give him the right way to look for information on the tribal records. Like, they're not going to have roll numbers the way that we think of roll numbers prior to 1899. Prior to the Campbell Creek roll, you're not going to have roll numbers. You're going to have lists. You're going to have, people on a list. People be numbered based upon, they'll be in head of household 1, next person 2, next person 3, next head of household 1, 2, 3, etc. That happens on some of these rolls. Okay, you don't have like the 4-digit roll numbers that were happening on the Campbell Creek roll, which became the basis of the final Dawes roll. So I'd explain to Mr. Perryman, who may or may not be a blood relative of mine, okay, because he can't definitively trace his lineage, but I told him, hey, look at earlier records prior to the final Dawes. You could look at tribal town rolls, 1895, 96, 82, etc., and that can help you trace further back. And there's other books you can look at to help you out, like Chronicles of Oklahoma, Tulsa's Magic Roots. These are useful resources. I would not consider those to be primary sources, but I would consider those to be good resources. The rolls and other supporting documents would be primary sources, okay? Like signed sworn affidavit of David M. Hodge, okay? Like things like that, stating whose grandparents are, okay? Stuff like that. Anyways, there's this girl. She mentioned that she goes to the tribal powwow, and someone else chimed in and said, hey, there's, that's not traditional Creek stuff to do, right? And so I chimed in and said, yeah, it has nothing to do with Muscogee heritage. Powwows are not a Creek thing. Jingle dances and fancy shawls have nothing to do with our culture at all. So then she asked the question, right? The question of like, what was the traditional clothing that we wore, right? So it went from me trolling to me having to explain things. And that's what this video is actually about. Not the trolling, not the back and forth of, okay, I'm calming down now and being nice to people, okay? Because that's what happens. Once I feel like I have to educate people on something, like, legitimately, the other stuff kind of goes away, and I start trying to actually help them, because real information needs to get out there. And that's going to be regardless of what political side you are on, whether it's tribal politics, whether it's freedmen versus non-freedmen, whether it's Republican versus Democrat, okay? It's important to get correct information and sources, okay? So yeah, I did explain to this young lady, I think she's a young lady, unless it's a picture from a long time ago, I explained that traditional clothing of today in Oklahoma, among, you know, the stomp grounds, it's not the same as it would have been back in the old days. Like nowadays, you got cowboy hats, you got ribbon shirts. I didn't mention the vests, but vests are a thing also, like a ribbon vest. I mean, these guys wear cowboy boots, jeans. The girls will, you know, women will wear ribbon dresses, things like that. Historically, like prior to the 20th century, none of this stuff was part of our clothing. Okay. All this stuff started showing up later on. Okay. It's like there's a bit of cowboy culture, but also sort of a blending of probably other tribal stuff. Not to sound hypocritical, but I think that's kind of where the ribbon shirt came from, is probably some cross-pollination with other tribes. I don't know this for sure. Okay. The generic Native American shirt or Indian shirt is basically the ribbon shirt. And it's not just us. It's not just Oklahoma tribes. It's all across the board. That's what's being worn. Okay. So, yeah. And the cowboy hats will usually have some type of, like beadwork band on them, sometimes feathers in the hats. Whether they're eagle or something else, I can't really say for sure, but I'll see feathers in the hats. And, but then you got historical clothing, okay? Like the breech clout, also known as a loincloth, also known in Oklahoma as a diaper, okay? I heard this from one elder directly, okay? And that tends to be used more during stickball. So, and not always so. It's kind of something which it survived through stickball. You look at 1930s, 1920s stickball pictures of Thoplako and maybe others, and Okima. There's a couple pictures I've seen. And yeah, these guys are wearing either like full legitimate breech clouts that literally go under your crotch and hang down each side, or it's like they're wearing underwear. They've got either the aforementioned traditional breech clout over it, or they've got like this little belt hanging around their waist and like a couple little flaps front and back. And, you know, that's not the historical version of a breech clout. However, I guess it gets the point across because that's the type of thing that we wore, and sometimes I believe still wear during stickball. So, but as far as like leggings and pucker toe moccasins and, you know, long shirts and turbans, all that stuff is cool, but it's all historical. It's obsolete. It's only used nowadays, literally, by reenactors, aka to some extent living historians. People like Jake Tiger who's a Seminole, right? He's very big at making that stuff, and he's, you know, he's one of these like technicians at Seminole Nation of Oklahoma that does this. And so you'll have that, but and then you'll have some elders who, particularly in the issue of Hickory Ground, I've noticed this. I believe Miko George Thompson, others have dressed up in historical Muscogee garb, basically these multicolored, I want to call them doublets. Having a Renaissance fair background, like I look at this stuff and I'm like, yeah, it's not a ribbon shirt, okay, and it's not a long shirt either. It's more like a overcoat. It's like there's a different term that, I mean, white men were wearing these things as well, but they weren't multicolored like that. like a frock or whatever. I might be using the wrong term here, but something like that, but with all this special multicolored fabric. That's what was being used. And so when it comes to traditional clothing, as we sometimes refer to it as, that's what you see, and it's only used for photo ops in regards to Hickory Ground or at the Council Oak ceremony in Tulsa, or by reenactors. I remember the late Mike Berryhill wore that type of clothing. Others kind of dressed up as well. I believe Shelby Flowers. I think he might have passed. He might still be alive. I'm not sure. But there's a couple guys who were hanging out with Mike and Mr. Berryhill and doing the cornstalk shoot. And I would see them wearing this clothing. But as far as like, is it traditional nowadays? Well, no. Well, why is that? Well, because you see people today wearing shorts and tennis shoes and t-shirts, things like that. Like, you don't have to be dressed up in ceremonial clothing necessarily to be a part of stuff. Now, I've never gone to a green corn. I want to go, but just some pictures I've seen, clandestine photos of people. You might see, and I didn't mention this in the comment section, but there is a sort of neck thing, and I've seen this in museum photographs from the National, I think it was the National Museum of the American Indian, and I've seen some clandestine photos that shouldn't exist. And one face I for sure recognize by name. We're friends on Facebook. And basically it's these strips of red wool fabric, and it goes around the neck and it ties in the back. And I believe that represents like turkey, whatever. I believe so. So that's a piece of traditional clothing that still exists. Okay. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to get the point across. Like I can right now, I can go ahead and take some of this red fabric I have, red wool, and just cut that out, tie it together, and it would be the thing. Literally, it's pretty simple, straightforward. You don't have to be a seamstress or a tailor or anything like that to make this. It's extremely simple. It's not designed to be fancy. It's not like, oh, we're going to put beads all over it and we're going to like carefully stitch the, and hem the edges. No. It's not like that. It's very, very basic. It's just to get the point across. Okay. Just like these Okima stickballers were, they were doing their whole thing with the, one panel in the front, one in the back, and a piece of string around it. It's like, that's not the original version, but it got the point across. I think that neck thing, even historically, was pretty low tech. It wasn't intended to be super fancy. You can actually see like depictions of stickballers wearing whatever version of a loincloth they have, and then they've also got that type of thing around them. Okay, and that's normal. Okay, like that's so historical clothing, some of it kind of carries over, but not a lot of it does. Most of the historical clothing that some mistakenly say is being traditional, it's not traditional anymore. Nobody does it unless they're doing like photo ops or living history, demonstration, education, things like that. You don't have to do any of that stuff to become a participant in the stuff, basically. So, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is that I'm hoping this video educates people on that. Maybe someday I'll make one of those neck things just because I have enough red wool fabric with which to do that. It would not be hard to make one. It'd be super, super damn easy. I consider that long before I saw those clandestine photos, okay? Which I do have somewhere on my phone. I'm not going to share that. Yeah. There's people that want to take pictures and people who've done recordings of green corn and things like that, at least audio recordings, not video so much, that have made their way online and into certain chats. Some of these chats no longer exist. They only existed for a time, and maybe they got exposed and people said, okay, we're shutting it down. I don't know. All I know is that we're not supposed to record that stuff. Okay. So maybe special permission was granted to do these Muscogee stomp dance CDs. Okay. You know, as far as the social stomp dance video, you'll see at the Smithsonian, Edwin Marshall being a major key player in that, and all these different ceremonial ground guys, you know, doing their thing. Women wear shell shakers if they're shaking shells. That is definitely a thing. I will say this as well. I probably covered this before, but the milk jug version. Okay, so traditionally it's I think like 9 turtle shells, something like that. There's a certain set number of turtle shells on each leg. Okay, and they're full of rocks, and so you shake them. There's holes punched in them, and they make a type of sound. Okay, that's their function. Well, post removal, and probably more like in the early 20th century, maybe late 19th century, but probably early 20th, you had these the rise of the milk jug, or milk can rather, shell shackles, and you know they're otherwise made the same. There's a piece of leather backing that then ties around the leg, and these milk cans with holes punched into them, looks like with a knife, you know, with rocks tossed into them. That serves the same function. Now there are people who are porch band who are using these now because they're trying to get in touch with their Muscogee roots. The problem is this is specifically an Oklahoma thing. The ancestors, the Muscogee ancestors, what few ancestors, partly because of, sorry, inbreeding, they kept marrying their cousins a lot. This is not a secret, okay? So they have less ancestors to begin with, but they also have less Muscogee ancestors because they don't have as much Indian blood, okay? And the Indian blood they have might be partly from other tribes, okay? So it's not their ancestors that were using these milk can versions. So now they're acquiring stuff from us to build up their vibrant culture, as Deborah Haaland referred to it as, not realizing that pretty much it's being, I hate to say, kind of hijacked from the Oklahoma Creeks, because the Porch Creeks didn't preserve their own traditional Muscogee culture, contrary to the claims of some. Okay, they don't have clans for the most part. Like, they're almost totally clanless. They don't have ceremonial grounds. They have powwows to replace the ceremonial grounds. Now they're trying to get some of the stuff back. Okay, but yeah, just throw my own prejudice in there. Okay, I'm also irritated by the fact, and I mentioned this before, I'm irritated by the fact that certain Muskogee hymns have been used on Porch Band as the background music for some of their productions, making it seem as if they were already doing this stuff when they weren't, because they weren't. Those hymns, those were my ancestors that were singing those hymns, okay? That's Oklahoma Creeks that were singing and developing those hymns, okay? I'm not saying it can't be shared and others shouldn't be singing it too. There's an Episcopal church somewhere that sings some version, a shortened version of Hallelujah, right? And I think it's cool. I think it is cool. However, let's give credit where it's due, okay? I don't want the Porch Band pretending that they were always doing this stuff, because they weren't. I don't want them pretending that they have a vibrant culture that's clearly hijacked, one, from other tribes, and two, kind of regained from us in Oklahoma, okay? I say us not because I'm in Oklahoma or because I was born there. My mom was. I lived there at one point, and that is my tribe that's in Oklahoma. That's the real Muscogee Creek Confederacy, continued on today, okay? So what was the Creek Confederacy is now the Muscogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma. That's the way it is. All these other little groups, I would say at best they're offshoots at best, but in reality, they don't have a real legitimate tribal government that traces back to the old Creek Confederacy. They don't have tribal towns. All that stuff disappeared. So you have people that are really trying to get in touch with their Muscogee roots, and I don't blame them for that. I actually respect that. But they need to be educated on who preserved this to begin with so that they can have it today. That tribute needs to be paid every single time, okay? It's just the way it is, okay? There's traditional stories of how one point in the past, like we're talking back in the days of the old Confederacy, right? How there were our traditional ceremonial type stuff was kind of out of whack. Okay. That's using my verbiage. Okay. And what happened is the Shawnee showed up and they actually helped us fix our stuff. And it's interesting to think of it that way. They kind of helped us fix our own stuff. And from that point on, there was a great friendship between our people and the Shawnee. It's like that's how the story is kind of going, right? And I think about that. I'm going like, okay, but we're paying tribute to the fact that the Shawnee. In these stories as they're written, proper tribute is being paid to the Shawnee for helping us at some point in the past to fix some of our errors and maybe our laziness. I don't know. So what caused these errors? I don't know. I will say that you listen to some Shawnee traditional songs and dancing, and it's not too different from ours. It's not exactly the same, but it's not too different. Okay, and that's interesting. It's very interesting. So, in any case, stomp dancing, traditional stomp dancing, that is the dancing that we did as a tribe and still do today. Powwows are not a part of our custom whatsoever. People can still do it. Some of us still do it, but the reality is you're not getting in touch with your roots by going to a powwow and doing powwow songs and dances. Okay. Yeah. Again, like fancy shawl and jingle dress and all that stuff. That's not us. We never did that. Okay. So, what else I got to say about this? I think that's pretty much it. I just kind of wanted to get that point across. And, sometimes maybe here's a lesson to be learned. Sometimes these moments of trolling and sometimes these moments of heated discussion can sometimes result in legitimate questions being asked and then legitimate answers being given that totally change the tune of the conversation in a good way. So maybe fighting is not such a bad thing sometimes. I don't know. Maybe we need to fight a little bit until we realize that, oh crap, I don't know this. Maybe I need to figure this out. And oh, that person really doesn't know. And I can tell they don't know. And I can tell they're sincere now. Maybe I should help them out. Okay? And that's maybe where these conversations actually need to go. And I'll end it with that for now. I'll be doing more in the future, and hope you're all having a good, wonderful beginning of the week. I'm tired. I still have not adjusted to the time change, so that's it for now. I'll get back to y'all later. Mado for watching, and Hadam Chichaflis.